today we have Neil Hill in the house here at Titan Fitness Coogee. Welcome to Australia, Neil. Neil, you're known as really in the bodybuilding world, you're known as the pro trainer to these great pro athletes, particularly 212 Mr. Olympia Flex Lewis. Tell us how you came about training these professional athletes and why you're looked upon as a guru to these guys and girls.
I don't like the word guru, to be honest with you, and I never actually chose this path as far as making a career or a lifestyle within, obviously, this great fitness industry that we're involved with. It really came about by accident, or maybe my passion of bringing out my own sort of personality and helping others hopefully achieve their chosen goals. For instance, now everybody has chosen goals and everybody has aspirations, whether it's to be a competitive athlete or whether it's maybe to see some kind of mental or physical change as a whole on their body composition, in a sense. But I started working with Flex when we met in his first show. He competed in his first show in a place called Port Talbot back in Wales, and that was in 2003. The year before, I competed, and in that very same show, winning the overall World Championships, where I won my pro card. So I was actually at that event judging, and I was also a guest star at that event. And I had heard about these two young gentlemen from Wales who were juniors at the time, who everybody was talking about with enthusiasm and excitement about how good they were. And I can remember thinking, I haven't seen any really good young junior athletes for a number of years. So it kind of went in one year and went out the other year. And then Flex walked on stage, and I swear, man, I had goose pimples. I literally kind of froze, and there was something about his physique which was just completely different than I'd seen it at any time in my career at that point. And I was probably in the industry at that point for about 13 or 14 years. And straight away I saw something which was just, it was just something special. It was like a gift. It was just like this, his overall persona and his personality and his confidence, but his shape and structure was just mind-blowing. But at the same time, he was like a physique of two halves. He had these world-class legs, but he had that junior physique, if that made sense. Yeah. And I don't know if I believe in fate. I don't know what I believe in, but there was definitely something which brought us together, and we were there, obviously, at the same time. Now, his training partner at the time was a really good high-level athlete, and he was one of these physiques which remind me of an Arnold, to be honest with you. But at the same time, his physique had never really progressed as far as real condition, but his overall physique was very much world class. His name was Steve Naylor. Now, actually, Steve and Flex were training partners, which I didn't know. So after the pre-judging, I was out in the car park getting some food maybe from my car, and I saw Steve, and I went up to Steve and said, look, it's the best I've seen you on stage for a long time, Steve, and I'm really impressed with your physique. And he said, oh, thank you, Neil, I'm grateful, obviously, coming from you. And he said, look, my training partner wants to know if he can meet you, can have a picture with you. And I said, yeah, no problems. And of course, it was Flex. So he introduced me to him, and of course I gave him a lot of praise, but at the same time I gave him some constructive criticism on his physique and his condition as a whole, because even though his physique and his condition was impressive for his first show, you could see that there were still some big changes potentially which could be made as far as condition is concerned for him to go up to that next level. So I asked him, was he going to be was he going to go on the following 4 weeks to actually compete in the British finals? And he said that he wasn't going to because he didn't feel he was good enough. And I said, well, you're actually good enough to win that show, but not looking like you are. If you make the right changes to your overall physique, that's a show that you could definitely win. So we just kind of just spoke, and we passed numbers, and 2 days later, Flex made the many long drives from his hometown down to where I lived, and that was basically it. That was like 13 years ago, and ever since then we've been very fortunate to travel around so many amazing different countries and cities, competing obviously in multiple different shows, and that's really when Flex and myself met for the first time, and obviously the natural synergies. But also, I know this is kind of a long answer to the question, I also felt very, very protective of him at the time as well. So I looked at him more as I built up a coach/athlete relationship. I also built a very meaningful relationship with him. I felt he kind of I sort of looked at him more as a son than an athlete as time went on, and I also felt very protective to make sure that not only was he going to be a potential successful athlete on stage, I also wanted to make sure that his life outside of that stage was full of balance. And I always feel that a lot of athletes lose what I would say the key content of who they are as a person, and meaning they lose that balance in their life. And if you don't have a balanced life and a balanced lifestyle, it's easy to get lost and get burnt out within this industry.
That's a really instrumental point. I mean, to have you as somewhat as a father figure and a mentor really through his whole life, holistically, would have been fantastic for him. Getting back to the training and the way you mentored him, was it your experience that allowed you to be and even to this day, is it the experience that allows you to be such a great coach to flex so many others, or do you have an academic background?
I think it's probably a combination of both, but I think that it's great to be academically very bright and be heavily knowledge. But I also think that sometimes academically can hold you back. And the reason why I say that is because the body doesn't always do what science tells you it should do. Do you understand?
Yes.
And it's also about being very distinctive and looking outside the box. So I think it's probably multiple things. I mean, I've been in the industry since I was 19. I'm actually 46 tomorrow. So I've been in the industry for quite some time. And I think that I've always been that person who's been very, very aware, and I listen to my body. So I'm not somebody who's just going to read something and then implement it and then allow that program or that nutritional program to carry me forward. What I'll actually do is I will think very heavily about what I'm actually doing and think about things on both levels. So think about something which is scientifically based and think about something which is actually common sense as well. And then I'll apply obviously those methods or that program, but I really listen to my body at the same time. So I think it's probably multiple things. Experience, obviously having a certain amount of knowledge, being a past athlete as well. And also I lived somewhere in the middle of Wales where there was no internet at the time, so there wasn't social media, there wasn't content that you could read on the internet. And also back in the day when I was training, everything was based around heavy weights, low volume training, and I had to do something very different because of the injuries that I was picking up from training that way. So I think that for me, I kind of always looked at it about really feeling for myself. And when I work with different athletes from different sporting backgrounds, and obviously I did a lot of prep with athletes who obviously seen the success that I had on a national level, international level on stage, it gave me the opportunity to listen to a lot of other people's bodies and learn from a lot of other people's bodies, and then obviously making those changes really from I would say distinctive decisions, because as I said, yes, there was a lot of science backed and based around what I did, but as I said, I also looked outside the box a lot as well.
It makes a lot of sense. So when you said the information wasn't there with the internet, did you go to university? Did you read books? Did you read bodybuilding magazines? Where did you acquire the knowledge outside of the experience? Where was the knowledge?
It was really from me reading.
Yes.
Reading. I didn't go to college. I didn't go to university. It's from me reading and obviously trial error, listening to my body. But also, there's such a big misconception out there where people try to make everything so damn technical. It's like, let's just cut the bullshit. The reality of it is, if you train hard and you break a muscle fiber down and you put the right nutritional protocol into place and you take the rest out and you put key supplementations in place, then you're going to see some form of recovery and potentially enhancement in performance, whether it's speed, whether it's endurance, whether it's power, or in our case, with the bodybuilders, obviously muscle size and growth. So I think that people just try to overemphasize things and bullshit things to get people to buy into something which really is nothing scientific, or if it is, it's more of a marketing ploy for people to actually make money off them. That's my real beliefs. Yeah.
If you could think about one thing that distinguishes athletes, you look at the level of athlete that Flex is and many other athletes that you train, what is it that makes them champions? Can you think about one thing, Neil, that makes them champions? Is it the knowledge? Is it the desire? Is it the goal setting? Is there one thing that they do differently to become champions?
Yeah, I would say that it's that personal ability to apply their passion and their demons into their chosen dreams or goals, to be honest with you, because obviously genetics play a huge part. Let's not even say that genetics don't play a part, because they do. But that doesn't mean that somebody can't go beyond their genetic potential if they apply all the tools which are necessary to see that positive change. Flex is driven on many levels about being the best and being successful. I would say a lot of his desire is based around building a better life for him and his parents. His parents are a big part of his success in the sense that they believed in him as a child from sports that he grew up with, especially rugby obviously was a big international sport back in the UK. And I know that he's very driven on being a champion, being successful, so that hopefully that one day he's going to be able to care for his parents like they did when he grew up. I know that's definitely something which is very personal towards him. But ultimately, everybody wants to be the best at what they do. You know, like I want to be the best, or I want to be considered up there with my other fellow coaches through the world. And I look up to, there's different personalities and there's different techniques, but I look up and I get motivated by those people, obviously, where I am within my community of coaches. I don't feel threatened by them. I have really no interest in what they do with their athletes. I'm only interested in what I really do. So I've got my own chosen goals, the same as like I put my energy and my focus into trying to be the best that I can be at what I do. So I said it's really down for the fact that those demons in yourself, or whether it's those insecurities of wanting to be better, I would say that's probably the main driving folk that I have actually seen, to be honest with you.
Yeah, very interesting. Tell me, a young guy or a young girl wanting to get into the sport and change their body, recompose their body, build muscle, lose fat, even one of your corporate clients that wants to change their body and they're getting into weight training and the nutrition, what advice would you give them very first up if they said to you, how do I become better? How do I change my body? How do I become a better bodybuilder?
Probably two main things. One is consistency and keeping yourself accountable to that routine or that lifestyle that you have to live if you want to see a positive change. And you can apply that to everything. So whether you're like a corporate businessman obviously who wants to see a change in his business or be successful, he has to apply certain tools. But those tools inevitably are going to be down to that consistency of commitment, and also taking responsibility for your own actions when you're not committing to something. So really it's about that consistency of commitment to stick to a daily lifestyle, diet. And I'm one of those people, especially when it comes to athletes or somebody who's looking to make a positive change. To me, one missed meal is like one wasted day on your program. One late meal is one wasted day on your program. One missed cardio session, one missed workout is one wasted day. So if there's 2 or 3 of those things that I've just touched upon that you are not doing on a daily basis, then in one day you could be already 4 or 5 days behind on yourself. So it's that consistency. Yes, obviously when you're keeping that consistency, you also have to find a fine balance about being balanced as well. Like I've said, it's okay to live this structured robotic lifestyle, but it's really important that you also have a life outside your chosen dreams or your chosen sport as well. So it's a matter of basing a balanced life and not being so selfish that it's the only thing which is important, because obviously your lifestyle potentially could affect other people, whether it's for the better or for the negative side of things. But there's definitely some common ground and some medium field that you're able to find that consistency, that balance, and see those positive changes taking place on a daily, weekly basis.
So consistency, folks, you've heard it from the best here. Consistency is certainly the key. Neil, bodybuilding at the moment, how do you see bodybuilding at the moment as a sport? It's changed so much in the last few years. You're seeing it at a professional international level with the introduction of other physique categories and so forth. The bodybuilding category, where do you see it now and where can you see it in 5 years' time?
It's interesting because obviously the industry in the sport has changed dramatically. I personally think it's actually changed for the better. And the reason why I've said that is because that men's physique class and that bikini class has definitely allowed the sport to open up and grow. And it's allowed it to be more streamed, but it's also allowed the bodybuilding community, because let's be honest, that's where the real heart and the hub is, basically. That's the real foundations. That's how we all started all those years ago. So it's really important that the industry as a whole, and that industry, when I say as a whole, that comes down to promoters, that comes down to the core, that comes down to the federations, that comes down to the athletes, not to ever lose their real identity, which obviously is bodybuilding. I think that the industry is at that point where it's in a delicate area where obviously mass is something which is very important. Bodybuilding is about mass, but it shouldn't just be about mass. It should be about symmetry, condition, structure, presentation, many things. And I think that there are some mass monsters which have come and gone in the industry. You have obviously Phil Heath and you have Kai Green, obviously who the larger athletes in the industry. You have one physique of Phil and one physique of Kai, which are very different. But you also have some new breed athletes which are coming into the industry, which are not mass builders or mass athletes. You've obviously got the synonymous, such an amazing athlete of Dexter Jackson, who's just obviously gone off from 2 wins. Obviously he's gone on, I think he just won his 5th Arnold Classic Championship, which I believe is a record. He went on to win obviously the Australian Arnolds. The great thing about what I love about somebody like a Dexter Jackson is he's never ever lost his identity or who he is as an athlete, meaning he always played to his strengths, and his strengths wasn't about mass, it was about shape, symmetry, condition, presentation, and look what that's allowed him to actually achieve. And more importantly, look how old he is. How many other athletes in our industry are present now or past which have actually gone on to accomplish what he's done, and then take all those accomplishments away, but look how healthy he looks as an individual now. And I think that equates to the fact that he's obviously played to his strengths, and his strengths was shape, condition, symmetry, but of course he trained for those things. And when I was a competitive athlete, I always trained to be the most complete condition athlete on stage. I always believed that you're only as strong as your weakest muscle group, and I always believed that a really condensed, conditioned, proportioned athlete potentially could always win against an athlete who's in lesser condition or is very incomplete as far as comparison of proportions. So I've competed against those athletes who are 250 and 240 and 260 on stage, and I've competed against those athletes that was at my fellow body weight of about 185, 190, and I've beaten those mass monsters because I always came into the show in condition. I always came in trying to be the best that I did. I never tried to play the mass game. So as far as the industry, it's growing, and I think it's growing in a positive way. I think that's great that we're able to break out to the masses and get some real broader appeal and draw people into the industry. At the same time, it would be great. I think that I would love to see the look of the 90s bodybuilders be back. I love the look of the Sean Rays, the Flex Wheelers, the Kevin Leveronis, the Chris Cormiers. That was to me a golden era because the condition then was very different to what it is today. It just was, and it wasn't because I was a competitive athlete then. One of my favorite athlete of all time, as far as being a pro, was Lee Labrada. And what I like about Lee Labrada and Flex is, even though they're very different to a certain extent with their physiques, they're both short, they were both complete, they both had beautiful artistic lines. Now, I understand that people sometimes base their personal preferences or their chosen goals or what they want to look like sometimes against their body compositions. But let's be honest, when you actually face facts, when we all look in the mirror, we all have insecurities, and we'd all like to look a certain way. All guys would love to be tall, dark and handsome with a great body. All women would love to be that bikini type of chick model look. Yep. Even they might say it wouldn't. It's like, bullshit. It's reality. That's what we would like to look like because it's in us. You can't help the fact that when you see a beautiful woman with a beautiful body, you obviously will look at it and say that's a beautiful physique. And the same way is that when a guy looks at that athletic men's physique look, it's really appealing because that was probably what you wanted to look like and then progress into something more when you actually started training. And those men physique guys, they train just like a bodybuilder. There's no difference between their lifestyles, their training habits, and their supplementation of them looking like they do and the Flex Lewises. The difference being is obviously the genetic potential ability to build that larger muscle is obviously different from a men's physique athlete. So I think that there's a great crossover, and I think that the industry is an interesting place where it's got the ability to keep growing as long as we don't lose that real identity to where we are at the moment. And I don't feel that the sport has done that by any means. It's always going to be difficult to please everybody. It's always going to be. It's one of those sports which is very subjective. So obviously people have different ideas of what the perfect physique is. But I suppose for me, I kind of know what I want from my physiques, and obviously when I'm obviously training Flex, whether it's from training, supplementation, whether it's the diet side of things, we're always working hard to be the most symmetrical, complete athlete on stage because I feel that's where his strengths are.
one tip, if you can give one tip to an athlete to become their very best in the gym with regards to training, what can you tell them with training? What is the most important thing when they walk into the gym with training to be the best that they can? What is it about your training methods that are different, and what is the most important thing about them, Neil?
Okay, I think that I talked about balance. And that's one thing about Y3T. It's a balanced protocol which is being applied or gets applied and adapted to bring out what I feel the most complete athlete or person you are inside. And the reason why I say that is because if you train in a very one-dimensional, methodical way, you're only going to be hitting one type of hypertrophy, or certainly you're not going to be breaking down the other hypertrophy stroke muscle fibers within the body. So whether in your head you're training heavy or whether you're training light, for instance, if you're only hitting one hypertrophy, one energy system and one muscle fiber, then you're holding and compressing yourself down to be able to break into other avenues. We're all completely genetically different. So your makeup of your muscle fibers is very different to mine. So without really going into too much science here, you could indirectly say there's a fast, medium, slow twitch muscle fiber. But if you're hitting that rep range of trying to maximize on the so-called sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, then you should be doing a rep range between 2 and maybe 6 repetitions to really capitalize on that. However, you run the risk of injuries, and also people don't always apply the right training techniques to their workouts, so poor form can come into play. If you're actually applying a program which is structured based around hitting different muscle fibers and different hypertrophies on different weeks, then you have the ability definitely to further that performance enhancement. Because if you're doing low repetition training and your arms is just, say for instance, 40% fast twitch muscle fibers, what about the other 60%? What are they doing? Because ultimately it's a muscle fiber. If you break down that muscle fiber or those other muscle fibers and you form an environment where it's broken down, and then obviously you're trying to create an environment with the right nutritional program, the right supplement program, where obviously you're seeing that anabolic response taking place and that reconnective tissue growth taking place, then you are going to see a change in that overall density of that muscle from power, strength to performance. There's no doubts about it. You're going to see that. And the great thing about Y3T is that the principles can be applied for anybody in any chosen sport whatsoever. So how I structure a Y3T program for flex could be very, very different to another athlete like Steve Cook or William Bonac, or one of my professional football players or rugby players, or depending what their chosen position is or their chosen sport is, I'll adapt the program around them and the hypertrophy basis is. But I will always train them with the Y3T methods or principles in the sense of hitting different energy systems and different hypertrophies and different muscle fibers. Now, what I can totally go against is when somebody will go into the gym and they'll do a workout and they'll basically apply maybe high volume, medium volume and low volume training all in one workout, and they'll say, well, what I'm doing there, I've got the best of both worlds, because what I'm doing now, I'm hitting all these different muscle fibers and these different hypertrophies, but you're not, because if you spend more time than a certain amount of time in the gym, you're going to overtrain. And if you're going to concentrate on doing low reps and then medium reps and then high reps, what you're doing is you're breaking down a certain muscle fiber within your body with low reps, medium reps, and high reps, but you're not maximizing the whole breakdown on that given workout. So when you're just hitting a partial amount of hypertrophy or a partial amount of muscle fibers in your body, you're not actually allowing that whole environment what you are trying to do. So that's why with week 1 with Y3T, we base our workouts around low volume training, but the rep range is anywhere between 6 and 12 repetitions, and we concentrate on compound movements, and just on average there's probably 12 working sets. On a week 2, the volume increases from about 14 to 18 repetitions, and then you incorporate different exercises, isolation movements and compound movements. The working sets are about 10 to 11. Then on a week 3, the volume increases for at least 25 to 30 repetitions, and they may incorporate drop sets, giant sets, but ultimately the reps are higher, and obviously you're really trying to maximize on that sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, maximum muscle stretching within the fascia, drawing a huge amount of volume of blood within that muscle fiber. But you will also, when you are going to failure on week 1, week 2, or week 3, when you go to that complete failure, and that's one thing I'm a big advocate of. I'm not an advocate of partials as a general rule or assisted reps. To me, It's all about doing full range of motion for as many reps as I can perform without a spotter. Now, the spotter may take the weight away from me and rack it back, but not any time is he going to actually help me. So it's up to me to make sure that I actually carry out that repetition if I'm actually going to actually apply it or put my point to it. So if you were concentrating on high reps and you concentrate on that sarcoplasmic hypertrophy and you're trying to maximize on that slow twitch muscle fiber breakdown, and bearing in mind, if you were hitting arms, maybe you got 60% of your muscle fiber in that arm is actually is made up from those slow twitch muscle fibers. That should tell you straight away that you're creating an environment straight away which potentially has the ability to build more muscle mass than that lower repetition training. So on paper, even though Y3T is a 3-week program where it's week 1, week 2, week 3, then you go back to week 1, week 2, week 3, it could be that one of my athletes will do 2 week 1s, 1 week 2, 1 week 3. Another athlete potentially could go 1 week 1, 2 week 2s, 1 week 3. Another athlete could be responsive really well to 2 week 1s, 1 week 2, 2 week 3s. But the principles are all the same. Do you understand? And what you're doing is you're concentrating on that hypertrophy that you should be on that chosen day. Because if you're trying to break down all those different muscle fibers in the body on that given day, it's never going to be done. Because also what's going to happen is if you're doing high volume training, at the beginning and you're breaking down those muscle fibers, and then you think, well, I'm going to do a lower rep range next set or whatever, your weakest link is already that slow twitch muscle fiber, even though in theory it shouldn't be coming into the play in the way that you would expect it to, because your rep range is lower. It still is, because it's already your weakest link. So your body's always going to fail on its weakest link. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. So what you're telling us, specific variety, Neil, is absolutely crucial to get the most out of your body when you walk into the gym. It's Y3T, it's fascinating. It makes a lot of sense. There's science behind it as well. Where can people get a hold of you to learn more about or implement Y3T?
Okay, I've obviously got a subscription site which is actually launching at the end of this month. People can join on to my daily email database, which basically means that every single day I write an article of some kind which will actually go out to those people on the database. They can actually get that database by just going on to my socials. So they actually check my Instagram, they check my Twitter, they check my Facebook. They'll be able to get those contact details. So if there's anybody obviously interested in what I'm primarily doing with my athletes, whether it's from a competitive point of view or whether it's the person, because I always say that all of my clients, they're all athletes. So whether it's a corporate businessman or whether it's actually a professional bodybuilder, they're all living that athlete type of lifestyle in a sense. So as I said, you can pick up all that information by visiting my socials, and obviously from those socials you can choose your chosen path, whether you're going to go onto the daily email list, whether you're going to go onto the subscription site, whether you're going to go onto the website. So there's a great amount of free content there that I give out every single day.
Thank you so much for your time and your knowledge, Neil. We really appreciate it. We wish you and Flex and all of your athletes all the very best for the future. Thank you, mate.